is true, it's very important to understand that the Lord our God empowers you
Amen.
to take care of yourself.
Amen. Amen.
And a lot of times, what is difficult for the Christian woman is we sometimes have this idea that we have to be so sacrificing and so selfless that we don't have enough to even take care of ourselves. And really, I don't know why that is. I can only theorize, of course, and maybe even through my experiences, that, even biblically, as we grow up, as much as there are so many virtuous women in the Bible, we tend to hear more about Eve, right? The downfall of mankind, right? We tend to hear more about Jezebel. We tend to hear more about Delilah.
Yeah.
More so than some of the other virtuous women in the Bible. Some of my favorites are Shiphrah and Puah. Do you guys remember who they are? The midwives, right? Who disobeyed the king of Egypt and did not slaughter those firstborn males. I love to hear about Rahab, who was that prostitute that outwitted the king of Jericho. Right? She hid those Israelite spies and helped the downfall of Jericho. But then, there's so many more layers upon this, especially as black women, when we think about the centuries of slavery, where you worked so hard, sometimes till you dropped. Women would work through pregnancy, through labor, and there's stories of women just stepping on the side of the field and birthing their babies. Working so you would not get punished, or your family would not get punished. And then even after that, we think about racism, discrimination, where we were so devalued, we had to work even harder to prove ourselves. And really in a lot of different ways, right? As mothers and daughters, we have to work 10 times harder in our eyes to be valued as a mother or a daughter. I know personally, going through medical school, I guess 25 years ago now, right? 25 years ago, where, there were affirmative action that was there to kind of help minorities get into medical school. And even though I got in on my own accord and not with an affirmative action, in my mind, my colleagues didn't know that, my fellow students didn't know that. So I worked 10, 20 times harder just to prove that I was not there on affirmative action, that I really, really deserved to be there. And then we talk about chronic stress. Chronic stress. Many of you probably don't even know how much stress you're under. We're taking care of our families. We're sometimes single moms, or taking care of our parents, our grandkids. We worry about our kids and society, not to mention just the financial stressors that we have. That I say what happens is we don't even hear the train coming. And what do I mean by that? Imagine yourself buying a house near a train track. When you first live there, every time that train goes by and blows its horn, what do? You startle. Your heart beats. You can't even think. Sometimes you can't even sleep because that train is coming. But what happens after you live there for a while? You don't even notice it, right? Friends come over and they look at you. Didn't you hear that train coming? You're like, what train? I didn't even hear it coming. But you have to understand that's what chronic stress even does to our system. And over time, I'm going to be honest with you, it can kill you. And what happens is, as we continually drain ourselves, or I even say, as you drain your cup, physically we wear down. And that's when we start to see the effects on your blood pressure, on your weight, diabetes, on your sleep, on your mood. And one of my favorite sayings in my clinic is, you cannot pour from an empty cup. And how can you even do God's work when your cup is empty?
Right.
So when I talk about self-care, I talk about filling your cup. And this talk, I'll be honest, was a little challenging for me because I'm not very good at filling my cup. But it was really important for me to even show you how God empowered you to fill your cup. So first thing, to take a pause. So often it is so busy in our day. We are constantly moving. We are constantly plugged in. So many of us have what I call decision fatigue. You're making so many decisions in a day. My nurses know this. They'll ask me, Dr. Florence, what do you want for lunch? And I'm like, I cannot make one more decision today. You decide for me. We have compassion fatigue. You want me to use that one? Okay. So many times we have compassion fatigue, where we spend so much time worrying about others around us that it becomes exhausting. And even Jesus was a great example of this. Luke 5:16, but Jesus often withdrew to lonely places and prayed. Take a pause for that cause.
Amen.
And just as much as you do those devotionals, take a few minutes for yourself. Fill your cup.
Amen.
One of my favorites is Psalm 46:10. Be still
That's it. That's it.
and know that I am God.
That's it.
Too many times we are constantly moving.
Yeah.
We are constantly thinking. So I encourage you to be still. The other thing is fellowship. One of the rising statistics that we see in our society is social isolation. And with social isolation, there carries the risk of depression,
Yeah.
Amen.
with an even higher risk of cardiac disease and death, most especially in women.
Wow.
You need a support system.
Amen.
We know that support systems help in so many ways, in recovery, in education, and even in your own health. One of the things that we even talk about in our wellness center is fellowshipping as a family.
Amen.
We have a Healthy Families program, and probably one of the first things we have to teach our families is to eat dinner together.
Amen.
We don't do that anymore. We're so busy with practices and meetings and games. We don't sit with each other. And the reality is that when you sit together as a family, statistics show your kids do better academically. Your kids are less likely to partake in high-risk behavior. And also, believe it or not, you have less issues managing your weight because the focus is on the fellowship and not the food.
Amen.
Yeah.
Amen.
So I encourage you to find your tribe. Proverbs 27:17, as iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. The next principle is sleep. We do not get enough sleep. Why is sleep important? Well, we talked about those computers, right, that my mom doesn't know how to start. Right? But, so what is important about sleep? You know, your brains are similar to computers. They need to reboot. They need to rest. They need to reprogram. In doing so, the next day, your blood pressure, your blood sugars, your mood, your metabolism, all of those things are improved if you've had a good night's sleep.
Wow.
So many times in this age, however, everything is 24 hours. And I'm going to
myself, but when I was young, we had 3 channels on the TV. And I tell you what, come midnight, when that TV turned off, there was nothing but dust, right? A little gray screen, or the rainbow colors and that sound.
Say it, girl.
TV was off.
You say it.
But nowadays in our society, it's constant. It's constant. Even those fancy phones and those TVs that give us that beautiful screen that we have, those little LED lights, you know what those lights do? They tell your brain to stay awake.
Wow.
So I just want to impress upon you that it's okay to turn those screens off. And it's okay to put away those distractions and try to get some sleep.
Amen.
On average, we need 7 to 8 hours of sleep to improve a lot of those health markers that I talked about. Psalm 127:2, in vain you rise early and stay up late, toiling for food to eat, for he grants sleep to those he loves. Get some sleep.
Yeah. Tell you.
And then what about healthy choices for your body? Right? There's so many unhealthy choices that are out there. We know about smoking cigarettes. Now we got to worry about vaping,
Yeah.
right? Those little e-cigs.
Yeah.
Fast food is at your disposal at any time, 24 hours a day. And we all know about drugs and excessive alcohol. All these things that are proven to be so toxic to our body and our well-being.
Amen.
So we have to start making better choices. Even just small, achievable goals are important, right? Maybe 1 less cigarette a day. Maybe 1 more glass of water a day.
Amen.
I'll be honest, I do preach, and this is something you can call me out on when you see me in the office. It is so important to drink water during the day. Everything, every chemical reaction in your body requires you to be hydrated.
Amen.
We typically will encourage people to drink at least 64 to 80 ounces of water. And I'm going to tell you right now, I was not very good at it. I was good at preaching it, but in my mind, the more water that I drank, it meant I had to go to the bathroom more.
Yeah.
And the more times I went to the bathroom, then I'm not working. And if I'm not getting my work done, that means more to do later. That's how my mind was working. But it's so important to make those good choices and to take care of your body. The ripple effects on your health are just endless. Ephesians 5:29, for no one ever hated his own flesh, but nourishes it and cherishes it, just as Christ does the church. And I'm sure many of you remember the Daniel diet. Do you remember where that came from? What a beautiful story, right?
Yeah.
So Daniel refused to eat the king's food.
Yes,
He did not want to drink that wine, did not want to drink that food. And the guards even said, well, we don't understand it. And so there was a challenge. And for 10 days, Daniel drank water and ate vegetables. And it said they even noticed 10 days later how healthier and better nourished Daniel and his men seemed to be. And I impress upon you because 80% of the medical issues that are facing our women today are preventable. 80%. Just by nourishing our body and changing some of our lifestyle. I always tell my diabetics, I can give you all the medicine in the world to make your sugars normal. 20 years ago, we had maybe 3 types of pills and a couple of types of insulin. In this age, I've got 10 or 11 different types of diabetes medications I can give you. Not to mention 5 or 6 types of insulin. But the reality is, if you make better choices in how you feed your body and how you move, you don't need all that medicine.
Amen. Amen.
So the next principle, you have to move. We have such a sedentary society. The American Heart Association recommends at least 10,000 steps a day to decrease your risk for heart disease and stroke. Many of us probably barely get 2,000, maybe 3 if you have to park far in the parking lot, right? And we're starting to see that sitting is the new smoking. Even if you don't smoke cigarettes, sitting for 8 hours a day and not getting enough steps daily can put you at the same risk as smoking.
Wow.
So, something to think about, walking is free. You don't need a gym membership. You can be anywhere to do it. And I understand sometimes maybe the neighborhood may not be as safe, but you can walk inside your home. You can walk around your church. You can even walk in place. All I ask is that you move faster than your couch. Jesus and his disciples, they walked everywhere. They didn't stay in one place and wait for people to walk to them. They walked out into the world.
Amen.
You know, God created this beautiful landscape for us. Genesis 13:17. Go walk through the length and breadth of the land, for I am giving it to you. 10 to 15 minutes a day of a simple walk or exercise can decrease your sugars for 10 to 15 hours. That's the stuff they don't tell you. 15 minutes a day, 4 to 5 times a week, can help lower your blood pressure and help you not have to take as much medication. Moving strengthens your muscles. You know how they say if you don't use it, you lose it? Well, it's the truth. 6th leading cause of death in the United States is dying from a complication of a fall.
Wow.
Okay? Because our bones are weak, our muscles are not used, we don't have good strength and balance, and we fall.
Wow.
So something to remember, you need to move. Now the last couple ones, I'll be honest, were challenging for me as well because I'm not very good at it. And I challenge you to stay in your lane. Right? You women know what I'm talking about. Stay in your lane.
There you go.
Be true to your journey. Don't get caught up in others' journeys. Too many times, especially with social media, fear of missing out, wanting to live up to expectations of the, I call it fake reality, we tend to judge ourselves to others. How many times do we say, well, Miss Betty works 2 jobs and she takes care of her kids and her grandkids and they have this and they have that, so shouldn't I be doing that? I have to tell you a story. I was in clinic and a little girl, Sophia, she said, Dr. Nikki, I want to be a doctor when I grow up. And I said, that's awesome, Sophia. And it was one of those days where, I'll be honest, I was really tired. And her mom said, but we need you to be a doctor until she gets there. And I was like, well, Sophia, you better hurry up. And I said, I'll try to, but I tell you what, if I win that Powerball, I may not be here. Right? And her mom quickly put me in check. And she said, Dr. Nikki, maybe that's why God won't allow you to win the Powerball.
Okay.
Right?
Right.
So you have to walk your own journey. And of course, my favorite story is the story in Luke of Martha and Mary. We all know that story,
Yeah.
right? Martha's busy making those preparations for dinner, like most of us do, right? Think about Thanksgiving. Cooking this, cooking that, make sure this is clean, doing this and that. Well, Mary chose to be in the moment, to have that experience of actually fellowshipping with the people at the dinner and listening to Jesus. And what happened? Martha got mad,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
She got upset because not only did she feel that her working harder than what it appeared the sister was doing, that she was of more value, and she felt her work should be more rewarded than her sister. I'm guilty of that. And what did Jesus say? You are worried and upset about many things, but only one thing is needed. Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken away from her. So during your day, you have to think, are you a Martha or are you a Mary?
All right.
Follow your own journey. The last principle is to empower each other. And I did not say do for each other. Okay, I chose that word specifically because too often we, as Christian women, want to do for everyone else. We want to do for our sisters, our brothers, but often the more you do for them, they may not do for themselves. So you want to empower them so they will be able to do for themselves. Just with experiences, with knowledge, or even the Spirit. One of my favorite stories, which is why I named my son Elijah, is Elijah and Elisha. And you have to remember, Elisha followed Elijah for years. And they walked and they talked. And when Elijah said to Elisha, what is it that I can give you at the end of my days? What is it you want? And it wasn't, I want a piece of clothing. And it wasn't, I wanted something material. It was, I wanted a double portion of your Holy Spirit.
Amen.
So that is how we empower each other. Not buying things for each other, not doing for each other, but it's important to empower each other. So, in closing, I just want you to remember that being a Christian woman doesn't mean that you completely empty your cup. You don't become so sacrificing and so selfless that you physically and emotionally aren't able to do God's work.
Amen.
You have to remember whose purpose does it serve, or who does it serve when you are so emotionally exhausted you cannot do God's work. Whose purpose does it serve when you are so physically and medically ill that you cannot do God's work? It doesn't serve God's purpose. So I want to challenge you to start filling your cup. And women, I know you can do this, but even more men, empower your women to fill their cup. Thank you.